I'm going to go ahead and get started. My name is Carolyn Froten. I've been working with the SL application itself for over 15 years. I started with SL 206, which, memory serves me right, they had a Customization Manager module in that version as well. So it has come version after version after version getting rolled over. I started in the distribution modules and then graduated into the environment pieces. But this is my first opportunity to really start digging into Customization Manager. So helping with this deck and presentation, I've been able to learn a lot that I'm looking forward to being able to share with you. And my co-presenter.
I'm Greg Hansen. I'm a longtime SL user. If you guys have ever met me, you know I'm very, very passionate about Dynamics SL. I was a CIO for a company that did e-commerce, and we integrated Dynamics SL with a bunch of different partners, eBay, PayPal, Amazon.com, a bunch of other great companies. And I am a big fan of the Customization Manager and the just ability of Dynamics SL to be, you know, custom fit to your specific needs. I've taught a class on customizations or Visual Basic programming at most of the user groups or convergence conferences for many years. And it's my favorite class to teach. It's my favorite class to participate in because I just think the whole Customization Manager and what it can do is amazing. So very excited to be here today. I'm no longer with the retail company. I'm now with a partner and do a little bit of consulting. So very, very excited to jump right in and talk about customizations.
Last night you told me how long you've actually been working with Customization Manager. How many years did you say?
It's 14 years.
14 years. Can you imagine the information that we can pick out of this man's brain? What are some of your, now I know you had mentioned that it's nice to be able to, you know, create and stuff like that. I'm a crafter personally, and I love to create things. I love to change things and make them my own as well as for whoever is going to be interfacing it with. Customization Manager, that pretty much fits exactly what it does, doesn't it?
It does. Like I said, it's so powerful what it can do. I'm guessing that people in this room, some of you have used it before, some of you haven't. Some of you are super power users and you're just kind of hoping to take one more tip home with you on one thing you can't do or maybe you want to figure out how to do. And maybe you're just here to share an idea that you have with all of us.
How many have already used Customization Manager and are familiar with it? And is it just mainly physical changes to the screens or actually putting code behind some of those new objects? That's a good, a little bit of both. That's perfect. So basically today what we're going to be doing is we're going to be just starting at the very basics, getting you familiar with Customization Manager, where to launch it, how to identify whether or not you're in a screen that is in that mode for you to be able to make those changes. Greg is going to give us some examples as well as walk through some demos of some really cool customizations that you can take home and implement back in your office. We're going to show you how to remove customizations. So if you make an error or if you notice that a customization is causing an issue with your screen load, how to remove that without removing all of your customizations, as well as how you can use it to improve the security and permissions within your screen for your users. So, the beginning. What is Customization Manager? Basically, it is a module that you have to purchase. It allows users to alter the appearance of the SL screens. That's going to allow you to change the look, the feel, so that it is better for your users to enter in their data and work on a daily basis. And Greg is the ultimate
hacker
tool to be able to implement Visual Basic behind some of those objects that you might add to the screens. So without knowledge of custom programming, you can alter the title of a screen, the fields. So if you don't want it to say account, you can actually abbreviate it. You can change description. You can make those changes very easily within Customization Manager. The tab order, if your users use a tab key to navigate through their screen, you can change the order of those tabs. Your column order and names. Now, grid behavior, that is one that I would like to hand over to Greg to elaborate a little bit. What does it mean by that you can change the grid behavior?
Well, those of us who work in Microsoft Excel a lot, sometimes we like to freeze columns in our grid so that, maybe the inventory description stays put, but you can look at what the different quantities and costs and things like that are. So there's ways with the Customization Manager that we can replicate some of that kind of custom behavior in our grid, just like we would in an Excel spreadsheet. We can also format, numbers that are in our grid the way we want to see them with commas and things like that. We can change colors. We can change the orders that things appear in the grid. If there's information way off to the right side that's useful to you and you want to bring it over to the left, we can manipulate it so that we can get it where you want to see it on the grid.
That makes sense, because I know a lot of times it's very frustrating to have to constantly scroll over to the right side of the screen when it doesn't completely display, or you don't have to go into the grid mode versus the display mode where you can just have one line at a time. So it'd be very helpful. The last point, where there's other properties of an on-screen object. What type of objects?
Yeah, so let's say you have a field that allows user standard data, but you really don't want them entering data. Maybe there's a default account and sub-account for you that you never want changed. Well, we can actually disable a field so that you can't change that number. We can actually hide a field completely so it doesn't even show up in our grid. We can change a field to have a red box around it to indicate to a user this is required. Or we can make it yellow. Be careful when you put something in this one. This is the markup %. Make sure you enter that one right, because it's going to cost you money if you don't. There's a lot of that kind of stuff that we can add functionality and just more user friendliness to the screen.
And that would also tie into your tab order, because if you take a field out that you want to have, for example, an account, you always want the same account to be used for a particular customer or vendor, and you don't want the tab stop to stop on that field, you can remove that.
Yep.
And so it'll just go right past it. You can disable it so they can't change it, because inevitably, if they're not watching, they might just type right over the top and change it for you.
Very cool.
So you can add, remove, disable, make visible or not. You can move, even change the background. So some of the benefits, I'm sure none of you would be here if you didn't know the benefits of being able to make your screens what you want them to be. But to make any screen display only data you need. A lot of customizations that I've seen, they will remove the columns that aren't important to them, or at least for their data entry people. It might be important for the manager or for the supervisor, but for the person who's entering in the data, you want them to just be able to go. Have fields with custom headings and captions. So those are headings and captions that make sense to you, not necessarily what made sense to the developers when they designed the screen. Any questions so far? Making sense?
Carolyn, you forgot the most important benefit of the Customization Manager.
What's that?
Make your boss happy.
Yes. And be profitable.
Absolutely. You give them what they want. Give the users what they want. Give your boss what he or she wants.
Yeah, because if you're tabbing through that screen and you're using useless fields and columns, you're just taking up time. You're wasting time.
So when you get back to the office and someone asks you about a customization, can this screen be customized or can you do this? The answer is always, of course, it's trivial. If you answer like that, your boss is going to love you. You can go back in the corner and figure out how you're really going to do it.
Yes. So let's get started. So to access Customization Manager from Microsoft Dynamics SL, you're going to be in the administration. Well, actually in any screen. You don't necessarily have to be in the administration menu at this point. But down at the very bottom, once you select they call them sales, or the flags up in the top.
I call it the San Diego Convention Center.
That works. If you scroll all the way down to the bottom, you'll see the control for the customization mode. You can also do the CTRL-ALT-C, and that'll get you into that mode to be able to customize the screen. To identify whether or not you are already in that mode, you can see from the top corners and the midway sections, there's little points of reference where you can actually grab and make the screen larger or smaller. And you'll see down at the bottom where there's little dots of a grid where you can actually snap your objects to that grid to make sure that everything is aligned. Another very important point when you're customizing the screens is what customization level that you're in. Now, from a technical support standpoint, this is something that we use quite a bit when troubleshooting a screen that may not be loading correctly, that has customizations on it. Down in the lower left-hand section of the SL navigation pane, there's an option where it says Self, and it will always default to Self as soon as you log into SL, because Self means you. It's loading in what customizations, navigation groups, and so forth are for you yourself. If you double-click on that, it will open up the Select Customization Level screen where you can change that navigation. When troubleshooting a screen that won't load, a lot of times support will have you double-click on that and change it to Standard up at the top so that it removes all customizations. Reload the screen. If it loads, we know that there's a conflict with the customization. These are the different customization levels, and Greg, if you could speak to some of these and how important they are in designing your customization, it'd be appreciated.
Yeah, so this is one of the cool features about the whole Customization Manager. You can customize the screen for just yourself. You can decide a group of users that all need sort of the same customizations and put them in a group, and then you can create a customization for that group. Or you can decide there's a customization that should apply to everybody in the company, and that's an all-user customization. So when you're the programmer and you're going to go in and create a customization, the very first thing you do is you hit that little self button down at the bottom of the screen. You launch this thing and you say, okay, is this for everyone? All users. Is this for just my peers, a group of us? All one group. If it's for me, it's self. What if it's just for Bob? I can go to one user and I can put Bob in there, and then it's just for Bob. So whatever mode you're in when you create that customization, that's who that customization is going to show up for. If it's not for everyone, it's just for you, you can do whatever you want because you're the only one you're going to break. So I always program first for me, make sure my customization does exactly what I want it to do, looks the way I want it to look, and then I go in as all user and I give it to everybody else. So that's what the whole point of the levels is who gets to benefit from this customization and who do I want to see. And again, if you're playing around with a screen and it doesn't work the way you expect it to, you can actually shut off customizations by selecting different options here. That'll turn off customizations that are bothering you. So if you want just the standard functionality, you select standard mode. If you want to see what Bob's seeing, you can actually log into his customization, one user Bob, and see what he's seeing. So it's a really powerful concept. Love it.
And this is where earlier I was mentioning that as a supervisor, you may want to see all the different fields that are in a screen, but as a user, you may not. This is where you can set different levels of customization and visual data that's coming back in your screens for your different users. This is also going to play into our later discussion when we start talking about security and permissions. If you disable a field, if you make it invisible, what have you, again, those customizations can be stored by user, by a group, what have you. Gives you a little bit more control. Actually, a lot more control.
Yeah. Very cool.
So is your screen already customized? A lot of times customers don't realize that they have a customization already loaded on their screen until they go to make a change or something's not working correctly. The telltale is the asterisk up in the top left-hand corner. You can also tell if you go under the administration menu and the export customizations, it will give you a list of all the screens that are in your system that have customizations. But you may notice in that screen that you may have 5, 6, sometimes 20 customizations on just your general ledger journal transaction screen. Yes?
That asterisk, does that only show up in customized mode, or is that any time screen loads?
The question was whether or not the asterisk shows up in customization mode or standard screen load. It shows up in standard screen load. And this is the export customization screen. You'll see that there are 2 at the top, and you'll see that the level is set to all users and one is set to self. That's exactly how you'll see them. So that really helps if you're trying to troubleshoot if you do have a customization on the screen, whether or not it's just for a single user or if it's for all users. One thing that you may notice if you're coming from older versions or if you have the save settings on exit option set, you'll have a lot of self-level customizations in here that may not be true customizations, but they may be something where a user has just opened the screen, changed the size of the screen, and saved it. If that save settings on exit is selected, it'll create a self-level customization for that user and just show up as self. But under Entity ID, you'll see what that self-level customization, what user it's associated to.
So one tip real quick on the export customizations. Those of us who are kind of hacker-oriented and may want to just try weird stuff on our screen and see what it's going to do, you can always export any customization that exists before you start messing with the screen, and then just go crazy on it. If you break something, so what? You can bring it back by importing that customization back in, and that'll put you back where you started again. And so you don't need to worry too much about, am I going to break the screen? Am I going to break my users? The answer is no. You're going to save all that stuff. You're going to only customize in your self mode. You're going to figure out whatever it takes to make it work, and then you're going to put it out there for everyone.
You said earlier that if you create customization in your self mode, you convert it to all users. I don't know how many times I have gone in and made a customization for everyone. Oh, shoot, that's yourself. I delete it and start all over. You say you can convert it?
Absolutely. You can take the file that it creates when you export it, and up in that file it tells you if it's for everyone or for one person. And you can actually edit that file and change it from one to everyone, and then you import it back, and it brings it changed.
Because I think a 500 level customization is self, 300 is all users.
Yep.
So you can make those changes.
So that's a little efficiency tip. You just create it as you, and then just change the file and bring it back for everyone.
Now, one thing, Greg, you did make a point of that you can export it out, make changes to it, and then import it back in. Mm-hmm. In earlier versions, when you would export them out, down at the bottom, I used to always call it garbage. Was at the bottom. It was just garble. In 2011, they actually have an option here at the bottom where it says export VBA as source. So you can actually see what it's doing and make changes to it. So that was really slick. I love that change.
Yep.
So in the export customization screen, the default name is going to be custom.cst. You can change that name to anything you want. You can save it anywhere you want. SL's not going to be too picky. But it is going to be a CST file. And you would just save that off somewhere where it's going to be safe, and then make any changes that you want it, so you have that backup. So let's look at some examples. So here's the look before. This is a standard screen, somewhat standard, because I got a little asterisk up there. Got a little ahead of myself. But we want to make some changes to this screen, just to give you an idea of what you can do. So we're going to add a new field. We're going to make these two columns invisible, because accounts, that's not important for the end user to be entering in data. That's important for the manager to make sure it's going to the right place, but for the person who's actually keying in the data, they may not need to have that. We're also going to rename a column, and we're going to rearrange them. So we're going to change how that grid looks and feels to you. So the first point that you need to do is go into customization mode. And you can see here in the properties, and I'll step back over here so Greg can see. For the external reference number, we're going to rename that to PO number, because that just makes more sense. Not everybody's going to understand that the external ref number is really the purchase order number. We're also going to change the tab index. Remember where we said earlier where you could change the tab order that you go through in the screen? You can change that. Whether or not it's visible. So we're going to take those columns out that we wanted out of there. And one point that Greg made earlier, if you see up at the very top of this properties window where it says the color, that's where you can actually change the color of the field itself, so you can make it visible to the person and make sure that they see it, that was an important information that needs to be entered in that field. So while we're there, you can add a hidden field by selecting the object wizard, which you're going to be, you want to talk a little bit on adding those at all?
Yeah, certainly. I think in the demo here in a second it'll show us that. Basically, one of the things that is really super powerful about SL is that all of the fields that are in the database are available to you as a customization person. So if there's data that you may not see on the screen, but it lives in your database, you can put an object on your screen to display it and present it to your users. One of the really common ones that I hear about is who created this document? When did they create this document? Who changed this document? I want to see that. Well, that information happens to be stored in the database. Every time we save something, it says, here's the created person, and here's the last updated person. And so that stuff's in the database. Now, we can go ahead and add a field on our screen with this Customization Manager to display the name of that person who created it. So especially like something like document maintenance for an invoice or something, you want to know who created this, when did they create it, we can add that capability. And we're going to show you here in just a second exactly how you do that.
Yep. It's very simple. Just add it, point it where you want it to go, and it's on your screen.
So how do we do this? We have the object editor. And in our menu under Customization Manager, one of the options is insert an object. So we select that object, and it says, well, what kind of object do you want to select? If you look at the graphic on the far left, it shows us there's text boxes that hold alphanumeric characters. There's numeric boxes. There's date boxes. There's buttons and labels that we can put on the screen. And it's kind of like you are the architect of the screen, and you're adding new stuff to it. You just pick what you want. Well, if I want to put the name of my created user in there, that's going to be a text box because I got to have a box to put his name in, or her name. So I select text box. The system automatically gives a name to any item we add to the program. So it's going to start with user 1, and it's going to go to user 2 and user 3 and user 4, whatever. So if you notice down at the bottom, this object is named xuser1. We could call it anything we want to. We could call it username or xuser or whatever else, but the screen's going to default to xuser1. What I find is all of us lazy programmers usually just leave it alone. Whatever it picks, that's what it is. So I would probably just leave this one xuser1 and move on. Once you hit the next button, you get a listing of all of the database fields that are in your program, that are there hidden for you to pick from. So in the document maintenance screen, we have the document itself. We have some detail information. We have some vendor information. We have some payment term information, et cetera, et cetera. And we can choose from any of that information that's not already on the screen, and we can bring it to the screen. So for me, I want the created user. I happen to know that lives at the document level. Every document has a little stamp, who created this. So I would select document on my insert object wizard. And as soon as I select document, all of the fields in that database show up. And sure enough, created user is one of the fields that shows up. That's what I wanted. So I select created user. I hit apply. And as soon as I hit apply, on my screen will be a new text box containing the created user for that document. And then I can move it around on my screen, decide where I want to have it sit. I can change the tab order or whatever to make it pretty and make it look however I want to make it look. But the very important thing is, with a few simple steps, I've added information to my users that they need in order to figure out who created this document. My boss is happy. It's trivial. Everyone wins. Right?
And that'd be a great thing for a manager to have versus a user, because if you need to identify how a record got entered in one way versus another, you'd have that created user right there.
Yep.
Everybody's win-win.
Ta-da!
So here's where he was talking about setting those properties. You can change the tab order, the caption, the color.
You see my little created by box
Yep.
on the screen?
Yep, right in the middle there. You can see where it just defaulted in. And like he was saying, you can literally grab that and move it around just like it's a clip art box, wherever you want that on your screen.
Yep. And voila.
Yep, now you can see the created by. You can see the fields down at the bottom, the columns are gone. They're not there anymore.
Yep. And we've renamed our field PO number.
Yep.
So, brilliant.
Yep. So, adding a customization. So, I'm going to hand it over to Greg on this one because this is definitely your playground.
Okay. All right, so here, I'll just grab this.
Yep.
So, how many of you work with big numbers in your screen from time to time? And how many of you have noticed that out of the box, Dynamics does not have commas all the time for big numbers. Have you guys noticed that? What did I do? Turn it off?
Oh, nope. Oh, yeah.
There we go. So here's a typical Dynamics SL screen. Notice the lack of an asterisk. This one is not customized. And we have a very large number. Because I'm in IT and I'm not in accounting, I don't know if that's 15,000, 150,000, a million, 150 million. I don't know what that big number is. I just know it's hard for me to read it. So my boss comes to me and says, hey, I really want commas. Can you fix this for me? The answer is, it's trivial.
It's trivial.
So I go to my Customization Manager. I turn off my presentation. And I put these 8 simple lines of code. Now, nobody in this room needs to be a programmer. If you are, good for you. My question for you today is, how many of you know somebody who's a programmer? If you know somebody who's a programmer and you tell them what you need to do, you're 80 or 90% of the way there. It may just work. You may have to tweak it a little bit. How many of you know the email address of someone else who's not in your company who's an SL user? Have you networked and met somebody? So the whole secret here is you just got to know one person you can email and say, my programmer wrote this code for me to add commas. Is this going to work? See, it's cheating if you just say, hey, can you give me free code to add commas? So you go to your programmer, even if he just knows Java, just give me some Java code to add commas. You throw that out there. It shows good faith, right? And then you get something back that says, here's how you really add the commas, right? The good news for you today, that is the actual code to add comments. And it shows you really how basic it is to program these screens if you know just a little tiny bit of programming or know somebody who does. So we add these 8 lines of code to our little program. And voila, on every single text box or numeric box in that screen that has a number, it now has commas. It's not like location by location by location by location. This does it all for the whole screen. Anywhere it sees a number, it changes it and it adds commas. So now in my control totals, in my totals I see it, in my invoice quantity I see the commas, anywhere. And that's the power of this Customization Manager. A few little lines of code can completely change the utility of your screen, make your users happy.
That's an understatement.
So a few of you came here for some power code tips. Here's a little power code tip, okay? How many of you use the purchasing module in Dynamics SL, or your users do? How many of you are able to print preview your PO in the purchasing module? You can't, right? What happens is when you push print, there's a little button that allows you to print your PO, but then you get a sheet of paper out of the printer. You don't preview it.
You can print it to file.
Okay.
And that's as close as you can get to previewing your PO.
Very good. So you can print preview to a file. That's not what we want. Boss comes in, says, I really want to print preview my invoice, my purchase order. Can I do it? Yeah, it's trivial, right? So what are the steps? We're the architects. We're the customization manager guys. We're going to design a customization. So here's how I would design a customization. Before I get my customization manager out, I would kind of think through the process a little bit. And I'd say, okay, what's going on here? I've got my purchase order screen. Fine, I've opened that up. I need to print it. If you push the print button in your purchase order module, most of you know there's a sub-screen that pops up. And it has a bunch of revision history that shows you all the times you've printed that PO. And you got to select a revision, and then that's the one that's going to print if you select it. So I go ahead and I push the print button, and I get that little sub-screen up. Okay? Now, that sub-screen is what I want to add a button to. I want to add a print preview button to the sub-screen in the print purchase order screen. How do you get into customization mode if you're already opening a sub-screen?
I'll tell you, you get a message that says that you can only have one application open at a time for customization.
Right. The San Diego Convention Center button just does not help this situation. So what you have to do to get in there is a magical little keystroke, Control-ALT-C. Alt-C is the shortcut for customize. If you do Control-ALT-C, that little subscreen will open. So problem solved. We can now customize our little subscreen. And then what are we going to do? We're going to add a button to the screen. and we're going to add some little code behind the button that actually prints our PO, previews our PO. So now we've designed our customization. I always say design it before you build it. We just designed our customization. So here we go. In reality, there's our purchase order screen. Here's our print PO subscreen. You can tell that I've already done my Control-Alt-C because we're in customization mode. And I've placed a little button, Print Preview, in the corner of that screen. How did I put that little button there? I went to the Insert Object wizard on my menu. One of the choices was Add an Object. And instead of a text box for the created user, I added a button for my Print Preview button. And then when it names your button, you have the chance to rename it. So I just called mine Button 2 because I'm not very original. So I put a button on there. I put the label on the button, Print Preview. I called it Button 2. And then when you click on the button on your customization mode, it'll take you into the code editor. And when you're in the code editor, it'll tell you that you're editing Button 2. That comes automatic with the product. And then you need to add a few lines of code, which most of you, if you're not programmers, don't know what to put. So you send an email to your buddy. Your buddy says, in Java, here's what we would do. You send that to a fellow user in the user group, or send it to me. And then I'd say, good effort, but here's how you do it. I send you back a response because I'm going to give you my business card, and you can ask me questions like this. And you'll know what code to put. And then sure enough, you can close your customization screen. Your new button shows up. You push your button, and voila. You can now print preview your PO. Your boss loves it. Your users love it. And you get this. Because it's print preview, you now can choose, do I want to save this as a PDF? Do I want to export this to Excel? What do I want to do with this thing? Now that screen's your own. Now you've customized that screen. You've made it powerful. You've made it efficient. You've added some new functionality for your users. That's why I love Customization Manager, because you can do things like this. The code that's on the slide, which you can all get with your presentation, on the conversion site, works. It really does print your PO. It's done and ready to go. But that's the kind of powerful thing that you can do with the Customization Manager. And believe it or not, people who are not programmers pick up on the simple scripting language pretty quick and actually can start messing around with the code pretty quick. I'm always astounded by how quickly people pick it up. So you can do this yourself. You can make powerful stuff. You just may need a little bit of help and guidance from your fellow users or from some of us who've done it before. And what I love about the Mavericky Dynamics SL community is we help each other. We're all kind of in this together. We love the product and we help each other. So I do offer my help and those of my peers, and I know they'll help you do it.
Now, jumping on that bandwagon, a lot of you have, I'm sure, gone through the expo. And when we polled the audience just a little bit earlier, there weren't a lot of hands that popped up saying that you knew of fellow SL users that may not be in your office. The SL user group is a great resource to be able to network and find other users. They're a great sounding board to post if you have an issue or question. Because like Greg said, there are a lot of people out there that use SL that will just jump in there and help you work through whatever issue that you're running into. So removing or fixing a customization. I don't know about you, but in playing with Customization Manager, I've found a lot of situations where I've put the field in the wrong spot and saved it, or I've broken my screen. It's a learning experience, but it's fun all the same. So if you make a mistake and you want to go back, it's no problem. You can enter into customization mode, and you can choose the option to remove changes for a particular object or from the screen. So if you put a field there that you don't want, you can remove the field. If you want to just start with a clean slate, you can start with a clean slate. Now there are also ways to clear these out of SQL in your database, because these customizations are actually stored in your system database. But it's usually better to stay within the screen, because if you remember correctly, when you go to the export customization window, you might have 5 or 6 or more customizations on a particular screen. Within the screen, SL knows which one of those lines is associated to what customization you're wanting to remove. In SQL, there's no way to differentiate that. So if you make a mistake and you want to go back, again, you just go into the Customize menu, and you see the options to remove from the object or from the screen. Security and permissions. This goes back to using the different levels, whether it's a self level, a user. So if you see down in the lower left-hand corner, again, I'm in self mode here, but you would go under the administration menu, system manager, and customization group maintenance. This is where you would set up your individual groups. So if you have an accounting users group that you want customizations to be associated to, you would want to set them up in this maintenance screen. For your managers, for your CEO, however you want to structure that, this is where you would set it up. Then when you do your customizations or roll them over out of your self mode, these would be the groups that you would use. These are not going to be necessarily the security groups that you set up for access to screens. These are for customizations. For the user-specific customizations, that is going to use the user ID set up in your user maintenance. So basically, you're just going to set it up like you would any other group ID in SL and associate the users that you want tied to that particular customization group. Aside from down in the lower left-hand corner, double-clicking that self to bring up the select customization level screen, you can also navigate to it directly from under the administration menu, select customization level. And we showed that screenshot of that screen earlier. As you can see with the one group, Greg had mentioned before where you can just type in the group ID that you want to make that customization for. You'll have the same type of a prompt for a user-specific customization, and then you can select them from within the database. So if you have multiple customization groups, you don't have to remember what those are. You just have to PV or F3, and it'll bring that listing up for you. So there's quite a few ways to be able to navigate and get that information. It's not just in one, and it doesn't rely on your memory. So let's see here. Within customization mode, we actually have this set. Trying to go back here. What we wanted to do here. Oh, it's the justify. Do you want to talk on this one?
Yeah,
I don't
sure.
think I've ever done the justify piece. I've added objects, but that's about it.
Yeah, so we're just talking about, different groups of users and what might be something that they demand. Let's say that someone wants to really conserve real estate on their grid because there's just not enough grid space for everything. Maybe they want to do a screen capture from time to time and get the information in their grid, and they want to just narrow everything down. Well, when you center justify things, it takes a bunch of white space on the left and right and just makes that grid bigger and bigger and bigger. So boss says, I don't want that. And we say, no worries. I can go into my properties. I can select my account field, for example. I can go into my property window. If you notice, one of the menu options is property window, or you can just hit F4, and sure enough, we have a capability there with alignment to left align our screen. We have the ability also to disable it completely so we can save real estate, or we can skip the tab stop on it and put it way out on the right end of the screen if we want to, so that it doesn't even show up in the view that we're looking at. So this is an example basically of us just being creative with the properties, creative with the control we have of the screen, so that we can conserve as much real estate as we can for information that the people actually care about. And if they want to do a screen capture or they want to do a screen share maybe with another user or something like that, maybe they're on a GoToMeeting and they don't want to be scrolling back and forth, these are some tips and tricks to condense the information on your screen so that it's usable. And it's an example of a customization group because it may be that the finance department needs this, but the operations department would rather have all of the detail, and we can give the operations group the detail they want. We can give the accounting group what they want. Everybody's happy, all with one customization manager.
So this is another good example of how you can customize the screen without having code. You can make it very functional and useful for your users without having that code background. Yes?
The tab index, if you were to drag
From my understanding, it will hold on to that tab number. So if it's automatically at the 5 and you move it all the way to the bottom of the screen, then on your 5th tab, it'll jump to the bottom of the screen, then jump back up.
Yeah, it's really annoying is the real answer. It's really annoying. It doesn't do that. It really should. I'm going to put that on my request card because it's annoying. You do have to go through, once you've moved things around, and kind of renumber everything. What I typically do is just put my focus on the first control, and then as you tab through, the good news is this little properties menu will stay focused on the tab, so at least you don't have to go find it every single time. It'll kind of stay there, and you just start with 1, 3, 5, 7, 9 or something. Just kind of renumber things. But it is a nuisance. I wish it did that. That would be a good feature.
It'd be very helpful.
Yeah, so the good news is SL User Group, they do have some of that on their download section. So if you remember the user group, you know there's a download function, and you can go in there and you can see all of the attachments and things that have been used in other seminars, and they have quite a few code snippets in there that are available. I believe Plumline has also some downloadable examples.
Yep, out on dynamicdownloads.com. There are quite a few free options that you can download.
And the community.dynamics.com website, actually, people ask these kind of questions to the forum. Mm-hmm. That's another great way to get code snippets. If you don't want to send an email to somebody, you can actually put in there, hey, I'm trying to customize such and such a screen. I need a little code snippet to do this. And the people, again, are very responsive and helpful. I'm always surprised how generous people are with their time on those kind of things. And, maybe you pay them back by you responding once you know how to do some things. Maybe you read some of those and pay back, some of those people. But I found that forum to be really helpful. And if you do searches for, Customization Manager, or you do searches for private sub, because that happens to show up in a lot of customization code. So I'll punch in Dynamics SL, private sub, and I'll just start seeing code snippets like, oh, that's a cool way to do that, or whatever. And you can kind of learn from other people that way. So the web, as usual, the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy has an answer to that.
I know, quite honestly, with the constant changes to the knowledge base and how things are constantly changing and navigation changes, and it makes it hard sometimes to ramp up on where to find things. I find Bing is really good, some of the other search engines as well, to just, like you said, type in Dynamics SL and the screen customization or what have you, and it will bring back a lot of the community posts that you might be looking for any of those tips.
Yes?
Go back a slide.
We can.
You bet.
Maybe back to that screen.
Do you know what the customized property browser is? Right below your highlighted property window?
Yep, the Shift 4 customized property browser. I think when I selected that, I want to say that it highlights the objects in your window that are customized. I can't really be 100% sure. Yep.
Yeah, it's a great tool to figure out what is customized on a particular control or whatever. It'll just pop through those. You don't need to see all of them. Just need to see the ones that have been customized. Yes? Yeah, thoughts on that?
That one's a tricky one. If you want to get rid of all of them, all the self-level customizations, a lot of times if you call support, they will do it in SQL, especially if you have a site with a lot of users. You should be able to do a load into the screen with one user and go in as that user and remove the objects for that user that way.
Yeah, that's the sort of clumsy way to do it, but that's the only way to do it is log in as them, go in as them and hit the remove customizations, and then save, and that gets rid of them. There's a real simple query statement that you can run that'll just nuke all of those out of your database. Like Carolyn said, sometimes people leave that save settings on exit on, and that just creates a lot of noise like that. And frankly, the users are unhappy half the time with the stuff that got saved, because they've moved their screen or resized something. So if you have a DBA or someone who administers your SL system, very often they can just run a quick little command that deletes that. And again, we can help you with the command to know what it is, give it to the right person. But that's the way we all really do it, is we just have that statement sort of saved somewhere, and we punch in and get that.
We find that hiccup a lot when a site will upgrade from one version to another. Those self-level customizations will sometimes cause a new screen not to load because it's not sized correctly or something has changed. The save settings on exit or the customization that you create for them? In earlier versions of SL, the save settings on exit was actually available off the main menu that you could go in and either select or deselect it. In 2011, they've removed that from the menu, and it's something that you can actually set within the Solomon INI. There should be a knowledge base article in there that you can set to allow the save settings on exit or to not allow it. And that's something that could be passed to all users using that.
And then was part of your question also, is there a way just to lock this out so people can't customize stuff? Mm-hmm. So there's permissions with the Customization Manager. The Customization Manager has a screen number assigned to it just like other screens in Dynamics. So what you can do is you can decide which power users you want to give rights to the Customization Manager, and then they'll have this capability to customize. Mm-hmm. Others you don't give rights to that screen number to. None of this exists for them. They don't even see a customized mode option. They can click the San Diego Convention Center all day long and nothing. So,
yes? It depends on the user. If I had Greg on my staff and he had a lot of self-level customizations, I wouldn't consider it clutter. I would consider it probably tinkering and making changes and things like that. For a regular standard user, I would probably see it as clutter. It shouldn't. Usually it's just literally just changing of the screen size.
Yeah, what I find is it's mostly display. Yeah, I don't notice any more, a performance hit loading the screen or anything like that, but it just looks funny a lot of times. One user will have a different one. And a lot of times where it happens is when you're switching computers and you have, different size screens. So maybe you're on a little laptop and you save settings, and then, you go the next time and your screen's tiny. Or the reverse, which is even worse, you go to a nice high-resolution system, you save settings, and your screen's huge. And now you go to your laptop and you can't see the whole screen because it's like big. So those are a couple cases where you really wish you didn't save on settings. And the only way to fix it is to kind of go in behind the scenes and remove that customization. So
we run into a lot of that with users that now with SL 2011, of course, the screen resolution has to be smaller for the screen to be able to load correctly, and it makes it very difficult for some users to be able to see the data and the values within the screen. So they make that screen larger, not realizing that if they change their system, work from home one day or something like that, it's going to cause them to not be able to see things correctly. Yes?
Yeah, it's a great question, though, and that's why we have this forum, is so we can be easy and we can be really hard. The quick answer to your question is yes, it's totally doable. There are a couple of Visual Basic commands that you add to your program to alert the program that you have other tables in mind, okay? And the actual command is called set address. So you have a set address command that says there's this other table that has more information that I'm interested in. And then what happens is when you save your customization one time with the set address in there, the next time you load it up and you do your little insert object wizard, your new table name shows up with all the old ones that were part of the old app. That set address alerts the system, oh, there's more information here. And then you can pick fields from that new table and add those to your screen. So it's really cool that you can do that. You just need to add a little bit of VB code to tell the screen, I want more information.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. And that's probably the more common, is you'll have a custom table that SL doesn't know about, Maybe you have more fields in your purchase order than there are in the table, so you have an extended purchase order table. You need to add all those new fields from your extended table. Very, very common thing that we do with the Customization Manager. Users love it. Works great. Yes?
Is there a way to make all of the font and all of the screens bigger?
The quick answer again is yes. You saw how we added commas to all the numeric fields. So with a few lines of code, instead of saying add commas to numbers, you say make font big. And it'll go through all the controls and put whatever size you told it to put. Just again, a few lines of code, and it'll just do it everywhere. If you want it on one code, on one control, you can say do it only on this one. But if you want it everywhere, you just say loop through everything and make it big.
Yes.
Can you clarify the SL user group? Is that found in customer sources?
The SL users group, you're going to hear a lot about on Friday. There's a session sort of describing what is about Thursday afternoon. I've been a passionate member of the user group for a long, long time. And there's about 1,000 members who are companies or individual SL users who are part of this user community. There's a conference once a year. This year it's going to be in Boston in the fall, I think at the Waterfront Hotel in Boston. And all of the sessions are geared to user issues, user needs. There's a ton of collaboration with the users and customization, Visual Basic scripting. There's another idea of object modeling where you sort of automate the functionality of a screen so that you don't have to do things. That's all discussed in great detail at the user group. So it's just, if you Google Dynamics SL User Group or Bing,
Yeah.
you
either
Bing
way.
it, seriously, you'll just get it. It's called DSLUG, D-S-L-U-G. You can just look that up too, and it'll just pop up, Dynamics SL User Group. We're Mavericky. There's like the GP User Group, AX User Group, Nav User Group. They all band together and have a big, massive conference. The Mavericky SL people go to Boston instead, have their own little club with 400 people. A little bit more intimate, we like it that way.
But I'll tell you, I've gone to an SL user group conference as well as these convergence sessions. And there's really, it's just a miniature version of convergence, but it's solely dedicated to SL. It's really nice.
And then once you're a member of the user group, they have webinars throughout the year. They have a lot of published information on their website that you have access to. You'll get invited to all the different events and, be invited to contribute because, it is a participative group.
They do have a kiosk down in the expo area within the Microsoft Dynamics SL section, and there are a number of flyers there. I encourage you to pick up on the information for the Boston conference.
Yep. Great question, though. Anything else in the last few minutes that we have? You guys, thank you so much for attending our class. If you have any questions, I'm going to grab some business cards. Please take one if you have anything you want to email me with a question. I'm always happy to answer. Never a charge or anything like that.
And he can also be found out on this, the user group as well. And just so you know, anything you post out on the community, the customer community page, the SL support people will also watch that and monitor it. So they'll be also adding any 2 bits that they might be able to run into. Thank you so much.
Thank you.